Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Tracer Burnout. I'm Dan.
I'm Roger.
And we've got a great episode lined up for you today with a very interesting guest. But first...
Yes, we have 2 new partners to our program. So first and foremost, we have Bear Creek Arsenal, North Carolina's own, here in the shadow of Fort Bragg. So really, really great gun manufacturer here. Mm-hmm. They've really made a name for themselves here in the last few years, and we are happy to be partnered up with them.
Yeah, Buy American. Buy North Carolinian.
Yeah, exactly. Also, another one that's very near and dear to my heart, we have Fox River Socks. So for all the, at least the Army veterans, I'm assuming the Air Force and the NEX, Marines, Navy, I don't know about their exchange.
Yeah.
But in the Army, clothing and sales for many, many years, they've sold Fox River Socks in their clothing sales stores, and I've been wearing them for a very long time, and on the soldier side, but also most of my civilian boot socks are Fox River, so I'm pretty excited about that.
They are comfortable, and they, especially some of the colder weather socks that I would get.
Oh, yeah.
They will definitely keep your Tootsies toasty, shall we say.
Tootsies toasty.
And it's a great recommendation coming from Roger because he doesn't hold too many things actually near or dear to his heart. And the fact that he holds both of them.
To my shriveled little black heart.
Yes.
So another great American company out of Iowa. So hat tip to our friends in the Midwest. So those partnerships are pretty new. So as the weeks and months unfold, you'll be hearing a lot more from us in reference to those. So
yes.
So good stuff.
Socks and home security.
Yes, home security.
That's what we'll call it.
We'll go with that.
Yes. Or recreational sportsmanship.
Yes, indeed.
So, yeah.
Mailbag.
Yes. Okay, so we got a question recently on the social medias about New Year's resolutions.
Yes.
Are you in the habit of making a New Year's resolution? Yes.
So, very symbolism heavy with New Year's resolutions. I mean, we should be improving ourselves and setting goals at all times. But, in the spirit of the times, yes, we do make New Year's resolutions in my family. And one in particular that my wife and I do is a Daniel fast. So for those who don't know, it's from the Old Testament, and it's basically a water and vegetable diet. When Daniel did it, he did a short one that took a break, then did a longer one. We usually just go ahead and do the longer one all at once. So it's kind of a good detox after the holiday season of just eating really fatty food and usually, being overserved one too many times. So
yes, yeah. I think most Americans have a particular problem with portion control because if something is good, we obviously want more of it.
Therefore.
So, switching up your diet after, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all in the span of 60 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably a good thing to switch up your diet.
So
it's at least a little bit.
It's like a vegan diet on steroids.
Normally I would poo-poo the vegans, but
vegans don't have any problem poo-pooing. Yes, we're not above poop jokes. Dan, what is your New Year's resolution, if you believe in such things?
I typically do not make New Year's resolutions. Just because I don't know. Yes, we should constantly be trying to improve ourselves. Every day you should be trying to do something to make yourself better in some way, shape, or form. But I find that most of the time it's people tend to set an achievable goal, but they set unrealistic expectations. Like, I'm going to go to the gym for the entire month of January, and that's great. But then after 30 days, when you've only lost, 5 pounds and you don't have, rippling abs, people will just give up and throw it away. I think for most people, it's the unrealistic expectations they set with that, with those resolutions that steers people wrong. But no, I personally do not tend to make those sorts of things because it is just another day, And I do try to better myself in some way, shape, or form every day.
I don't see any evidence of that.
I didn't say that it was working. I said that I try.
The gym thing makes me laugh because a lot of the gym rats that I know will usually take the first 2 weeks of January off from the gym just so the flash in the pan people can come in and do their 3 workouts and then burn out, and then they'll just
and then they keep paying their Gold's Gym membership for the next 5 years, even though they're not actually going to the gym.
They have good intentions.
You, Keith.
They have good intentions.
Yeah, that's true. That makes sense. It takes, I think it's something like, it takes 2 weeks to make a routine, but it takes 30 days to create a habit.
An actual habit. Yeah.
Yeah. So 30 days really is like the goal to reach, but you can't really take any time off.
Yeah.
In that, you have to actually create the routine first.
Well, if it were hard, everybody would do it, right?
You mean if it was easy, everybody would do it?
That's what I meant to say.
Right.
If it were hard, nobody would do it. Wait. Strike that. Reverse it. Okay. Without further ado, we present to you our first multi-service veteran, Miss Bev Goldsmith.
Enjoy.
Bev, welcome to Tracer Burnout.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
It's so nice to have another Michigander on the show, but you are not a Youper.
No, I live under the bridge.
Under the bridge.
Under the bridge.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we typically get started with a little bit of family history. Do you have a history of service in your family?
Yes, there's a list. So my dad was in the Navy. He was in the Navy band. And then my uncle, Tim, was in the Army. My brother, Philip, was in the Marine Corps. My mom's brother was in the Marine Corps. My mom's dad was in the Army. Any further back than that, I don't remember. But that was it starts getting hazy. There's a list.
That's still very impressive.
Pretty wide range of service.
I was the only one to go in the Air Force, so I was the odd man out for a while.
Okay, well, why did you choose the Air Force? Or rather specifically, because you started in the Air Guard.
Yes.
So
that's a funny story, actually. So I had I wanted to go in the Marine Corps. And while my brother was stationed I want to say he was in Japan at the time, I had a phone call with him to let him know, like, hey, I'm going to go to the recruiter and join the Marine Corps. And he was like, no, don't do it. If you join the Marines, I swear I won't speak to you again. I was like, oh, all right. Air Force it is.
Did he say why?
He did not.
Like, even to this day?
Even to this day, he did not. So I don't know.
Weird.
It's just one of those things. And I was like, okay. He'd already been in for about 3 years at that point. So I felt not taking his advice would not be a great idea.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay. So why the Air Guard then?
I went in the Air National Guard because I really liked airplanes. So I really wanted to get into the avionics side. Mm-hmm. But I ended up kind of getting sucked into the mechanical side because I always liked mechanical things. I used
working with your hands.
Yeah, working with my hands and stuff like that. So I ended up becoming a F-16 crew chief for about 3 years. And then right when the Selfridge Air National Guard base was about to switch over to A-10s, I think they gave all their F-16s to Indiana. That's when I was deciding to switch over to the Army active duty because I was looking to get into law enforcement. So one of my friends that I worked with as an F-16 crew chief worked at the Detroit Police Department. So I'd been talking to him a little bit about, applying for Detroit, and I think I was 19 or 20 at the time, and he was strongly against that. He was like, you're too young to work in Detroit.
I imagine being a cop in Detroit's tough work, I would think, yes.
It is. I actually have a lot of friends that worked for the Detroit Police Department because I was actually a full-time police officer for a while within Oakland County, and a lot of the guys that I worked with came from Detroit, and
So you were I just want to make sure I get this. So you were a police officer while you were in the Air National Guard simultaneously?
No.
Okay.
I was just a full-time student when I was in the Air National Guard.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I'd go and do my part-time. I ended up doing AGR at Selfridge for a short while, for about 3 months. And then after that, it was like, I went back to school full-time, and it was just not doing it for me.
Please explain what AGR is.
AGR is basically you are considered a civilian contractor, but you're still going to work in your uniform.
It's an active Guard reserve. Yep.
Yeah, basically.
So you're in the Guard or Reserve, but you're a full-timer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where were you going to school?
OCC, Oakland Community College. So
Yeah.
I was going there for music, actually. Said nothing.
But you wanted to learn about avionics.
I know. Had nothing to do with what I was doing.
She's a Renaissance woman.
That's fair enough.
Yes. I was a conglomerate of things.
Okay.
A
So
polyglot.
Yes.
the music portion, I'm assuming that means that you play at least one instrument?
I played the piano, and I played the guitar, and I played the lap dulcimer.
The what?
The lap dulcimer.
The what?
Strings. It's a dulcimer.
It's a very archaic instrument that people forget about.
Yeah. I mean, I know what it is, but the audience doesn't. Okay.
So,
Why that?
why the lap dulcimer?
Yeah.
I think
You wanted to boast to your friends and family about your unique skill with
definitely
with
not,
archaic
because I
string
think only
instruments.
one of my friends knew that I played that. No, my parents went and bought one. My dad was one of those people who was like, "This is such a beautiful instrument,"
Yeah.
and
They
he'd buy
are.
it.
Yeah.
Doesn't know how to play it. He just wanted to buy it, and then my mom would, "Why did you buy that? Nobody in this house plays that." And I grew up in a family of 5 kids, so it's just like none of these children are going to play this instrument. And he was like, "Well, what about Bevin? She always liked it." So of course I ended up getting sucked into it, and I learned how to play it.
I think that's pretty cool. I mean, your dad was a musician.
Yeah. I think he played the trumpet, horn.
But not strings.
No,
Okay.
not strings. No. But he does now.
Oh, okay.
Plays guitar now.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That's very cool.
Okay.
So you are in the air. You're a full-time student. You're in the Air National Guard. You're working with your hands, working with aircraft. Mm-hmm. Somehow you end up in the Army. How does this happen?
So, like I said, I was looking into going into law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin Weston, he was in the Army. I forgot to mention him. He was in the Army for a while before I had made the decision to transition to the Army. And he knew I was talking about going into law enforcement. And I had a conversation with him. And he said, "Well, why don't you just transfer to the Army, active Army, and be an MP? Done deal. Like, it's not that hard." I was like, "That's a bright idea. Let's do that.
Famous last words.
Yeah.
Let's do that." And I was actually...
Because the Air Force doesn't have law enforcement?
I think that's a rabbit trail conversation.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
She's right.
When I switched over to the Army, I found out that security forces are actually called Air Bears. So, I don't know. And then, yeah. So, but that's a rabbit trail conversation.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I ended up taking his advice and transferring over into the active Army. And one of my supervisors in the tool crib, I had been working in the tool crib for a few weeks, helping to like fix tools. He was in the Army before he was in the Air Force, and as soon as he found out that I switched, he said, "Don't you think that's a little backwards?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" 'Cause I was young, I didn't know. He's like, "Well, do you like camping?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. My parents took me camping growing up."
Why
And he was
not?
like, No. Do you like camping?" I'm like, "Yes, I like camping." I was like, "All right. Usually people do it the other way around. I'll see you in a few years." I was like, "All right."
Okay.
So then
For context, what year was this that you switched over?
I switched over in 2008.
Okay.
So I joined the Air National Guard 2006 and switched over the end of 2008.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Because you wanted to go camping. And be a police officer.
Because I wanted to go camping.
Because that's what we do.
And be a police officer. And I wanted to deploy. And my squadron was not deploying until like 2012. So
that makes sense.
Me being young and very motivated.
Adventurous.
Yes.
It's like, that's too far away.
Yeah.
Who's deploying time now?
Okay.
So.
Well, in 2008, that was the tail end of the surge in Iraq. But, we would still end up being there for several years after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you get kind of caught up in that?
I did, because I ended up deploying in 2011 for Operation New Dawn.
So that was New Dawn.
Which was the closer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Okay, going back to your changeover, what was the adjustment? Well, where did you go to? Because I'm assuming you had to go to basic training all over again.
Yes.
Okay, so what was the transition like from the active guard Air Force to active Army?
It was very different. My first duty station, so to start the transition process, they sent me to Fort Sill. So I was at Fort Sill in Oklahoma for probably about 2 weeks, and that's where everybody in my group was transitioning from a different branch.
Oh, wow.
Most of them from Navy and Marines, because the Navy was getting rid of certain jobs, and the Marines that were transitioning were just to the point where it was like, I can't do this job anymore. Like, I'm too old or I have too many injuries, and they're like transitioning into something else.
Okay.
So, everybody that I was with was transitioning. So when I was at Fort Sill, it was teaching us the Army song and the Soldier's Creed, and it wasn't necessarily like a basic training type of thing. It was just more like a
orientation.
My friends and I would call it our first indoctrination stage. So that's what that was. And then from there, they sent us to Santa Fe, New Mexico to train with the 515th Regiment. That was the basic training stage.
Interesting.
And it was different for me because in the Air Force or Air National Guard, we would call each other by our first name. Mm-hmm. And it was very businessy and like
corporate.
Very corporate.
I think what you mean is more professional.
Very professional.
A different kind of professional.
People caring about one another's feelings and like, how are you doing this morning? And can I nuke your coffee for you? Like, what can
Dan and I are just chuckling because we're old Army guys. So we're
grumble.
I think that is something that my cousin Weston was laughing about as I switched over, and he was like, I'm proud of you. Let me know how you do. I'm like, all right. So, I think the first time that I actually met a drill sergeant, I had like this mentality of, this is gonna be great. It's gonna be like a new adventure. I'm like on this awesome like field trip type thing. Like butterflies. I'm like laying in my rack. There's like red lights to like make sure no one trips and falls going to the bathroom. I'm just laying there and I'm like all excited. And I think I had only been laying there for maybe like 3 hours, and I just started to fall asleep, and a drill sergeant had just like bust, and I was the senior drill sergeant that like busted the door in. And of course he had like the silver tooth, and he was just like built like a rhinoceros, and just came in and just like randomly started like throwing people's things everywhere. And the first thing I thought to myself was, that's rude. Why would
this is so unnecessary.
Why are you doing what are you doing that? And then like the movie Full Metal Jacket came on in my head because my brother loves that movie. Yep. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I know it's
game on.
I know what's gonna happen. Okay. So I'm like, yeah, but after that, it was a very sobering experience.
Dan was the footlocker thrower when he was a drill sergeant.
I did no such thing.
Does anybody actually believe that?
No such incident was ever recorded or reported.
There it is.
If it's not on paper,
that's right.
It didn't happen.
Pixar didn't happen. So you said this was in Santa Fe?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Are you aware of the... This is a piece of Army that we're actually unfamiliar with.
So it's all prior service down there. That's it.
Gotcha.
Those are the only people that go down there.
Interesting.
And
this is legitimate, like, basic training. This isn't
it's
isn't
just
your MP
no
advanced training.
It's just for prior service members. So and we don't even really call them drill sergeants, we call them cadre.
Well,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Basically.
That's interesting.
What they are.
I was not aware of this.
What is the name of the installation?
Oh my goodness. I don't remember. I know it's a training.
Fort Holy Hell, it's hot here.
Well, I went in November, December timeframe, so it was just cold.
Yeah, Santa Fe.
It was just cold, and there's nothing to block the wind.
Yeah.
This is just flat, and there's rocks
Flat
everywhere.
and windy.
Yes, flat and windy. So, yeah.
Okay. How long was the process of, I guess, transitioning to the new service?
So my training at the 515th Regiment it started in December, beginning of December. And then I finally went to Fort Leonard Wood for my military police academy. I'll say it was January-ish time frame.
About 6 weeks?
About that, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you're all prior service, so there's things that you're going to know.
Right.
So, okay. That makes sense.
I did notice that, you know, all my buddies who were in the Air Force, we had our own little cohort, like, support group.
Okay.
Or click.
Yes, click. When we went to go do our final, basically it's your major field problem at the end of the training cycle. We were all like lost in the sauce. Like it was like going on a gun range. Like, it's not like we hadn't shot before, but I hadn't shot like that since basic training in the Air Force. So going out there was just like, you know, you have to learn the whole process, and it was intimidating because I had no clue what was going on.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're off to Fort Leonard Wood.
Fort Lost in the Woods.
Fort Lost in the Woods.
Fort Lost in the Woods.
So
to go to the Military Police Academy.
Yes.
Was it as fun as the movies?
Or at least I was going to ask that same question. You stole it.
At least the first movie, anyway. The rest of them kind of fell off.
It was rough. The first few weeks were rough, and by that point, I was pretty like set into the Army ways. I guess you could say. I was excited about it. Yeah. I still liked it. I wasn't like this was a terrible mistake.
They had beaten the Air Force out of you.
They had beaten the Air Force out of me. There was no more Air Force.
Pull that a little closer. There we go.
Yeah, the first two weeks that I was there, we did PT 3 times a day.
Oh, that's rough. And that's a rough time of year too.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
It was so cold.
Yep.
Missouri is awful in the winter. And everyone would tell me, like, Missouri is cold. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not gonna like it. I'm like, well, I'm from Michigan, so.
Well, you get all the seasons there.
You do.
You really, really do. I was there during the summer for drill sergeant school.
Yeah.
And it was hot.
Yes.
Yeah, Fort Still's like that too. It's the hottest and coldest place in the continental United States, southwestern Oklahoma. Oof. So Leonard Wood's similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus you have the humidity too.
Yeah. It's not moody like Michigan is. Michigan is like, in March, you could have like this beautiful spring day, and then the next day you have like 12 inches of snow on the ground. Whereas I found like Missouri if it's wintertime, it is winter. If it is springtime, it is spring.
That's fair. Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first 2 weeks we had to do PT 3 times a day. And then after that, it kind of tapered off to 2 times a day. And then it kind of tapered back up again to whatever mood the drill sergeants were in. So sometimes we do it 3 times a day, but it was a lot. It was a lot of work.
Well, coming from the Air Force, your physical fitness regimen is nowhere near as rigorous.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So you were attending your AIT, your Advanced Individual Training. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the different types of MP, MOSs, and then which one you were specifically.
There are a lot.
Yeah.
So I can't name off every single one, but
sure.
there's there's echoes. Those guys are the ones that specifically work in the jail, or we'll say like Guantanamo. Then there's the kilos. Those are the canine guys. Then there's the Bravos, which is what I was. I was a 31 Bravo. We're just the regular, what you would call multi-purpose MPs. We do legitimately everything, minus canine. Sometimes we would get asked or put out on detail to go over to the canine or the kennels and help them with training. So we would have to like put on
the bodysuit,
put on the red man suit, and like get eaten up,
Get mauled.
So
Do the Bravos cover personal security?
yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, we'll do personal security. We'll do, if someone special comes into town, we'll do those.
Yeah.
Like little security convoys and things like that.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
Because I've known a few MPs that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's kind of two tracks, and one is you stay kind of like, think like a beat cop where you're doing the general MP stuff, and then they kind of the others get pigeonholed into personal security, and that's the like suits and MP5s and that kind of that track. So I've known a lot of guys that went that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to steal your thunder though. So
No. And then that's another little, I guess, sub MOS of the 31 Bravo is you can do what am I thinking? The criminal investigation unit.
Right. CID.
Or you can do the military, what am I thinking? MPI, which is like the military police investigations. I don't know what the specific MOS code is for those though.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That starts getting into warrant officer territory too. There's a lot of them over there as well.
I think there's more warrant officers in MPI than there are in CID.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was one of my sergeants when I was stationed in Korea he had just transitioned from artillery to 31 Bravo, which to me was a very strange transition, but I don't have anywhere to talk because
to each their own.
He was a 31 Bravo for a short time, and then he ended up kind of pigeonholing into the MPI and only did that for a short while, and I was like, yeah, I don't like that, and switched back to 31 Bravo.
Interesting.
Okay. So how long was your advanced training?
I got there in probably about 3 months-ish. So I started in January, and I graduated in March.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay. When you were in basic training, did you go through, or not basic training, I'm sorry, your advanced training. Were you taught pretty much every facet of being an MP based on the different tracks that we talked about? So you did learn a little bit about each type of MOS that you could wind up with?
Yeah. So they'll give us like a general overview of each one of those things. Because it's really to explain, like, as an MP, the opportunity, the options for your career are really unlimited.
Yeah.
Like you can do a lot in that career field. And, a lot of people, like my sergeant from Korea, a lot of people will go CID or MPI, or they'll go into K9, and then they'll decide, I don't really want to do this anymore, and they'll go back to being regular. Though, I do have to say, any one of my friends who has gone K9 has never come back.
The dogs are too awesome.
They just love it too much.
Yeah.
It's just an awesome job.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
I don't want to get too far ahead of you on this, and for any of the old infantry guys out there, or young infantry guys, may correct me if I'm wrong, but it used to be the case that an MP company had more firepower in it than an MP company had more than an infantry company as far as weapon systems, things like that. I don't know if that is still true.
Still true.
Yeah. Okay. So
Still true.
Most people would not think that, but it is true. Yeah.
It is. We have a lot of toys.
Yeah.
Lots of toys.
Okay. So you're finishing up AIT.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any say or choice in where you go for your next duty station?
Yes. So they did give us a choice, and they actually give us a choice of schools. So I was actually slotted to do airborne after my military police academy. And I guess a large group of infantry guys graduated literally right before my class. So, of course, the infantry guys get precedence over slots in airborne and air assault school. So I ended up getting pulled from that slot. And my drill sergeant had come out and was like, listen, someone took your spot. But you are going to go to Korea, which you asked to do anyway. So it's like a win-win. And I was like, yeah, I would have rather gone to airborne school, but all right.
Yeah. You asked to go to Korea?
I did.
Okay, why? Like,
I was really trying to think of places that I just wanted to go and experience. And I hadn't really experienced anything.
Were you single at the time?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if you're young and single, Korea's a great gig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it was, I think I had down on there, Germany, Korea, Hawaii. And out of all my friends that I went through all my initial Army training with, all of them got slotted for Germany. And I was the only one to get slotted for Korea.
Boo.
So, yeah.
Where did you go in Korea?
I got stationed at Camp Hovey.
Oh, yeah.
Which was like all the way up north.
Which is still there. Oh, I know Area 1 very well.
Yeah.
Camp Hovey's one of the only ones that's still there, by the way.
Is it?
Most of Area 1 is retreated down to Camp Humphreys, which is in Area...
So is Camp Casey still a thing, or... Because that was like the bigger piece.
Well, they're connected. Yeah, Casey and Hovey were connected. So the short answer is yes, but most of the rest of Area 1 has been dissolved.
Wow.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
In the last 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hopping up there when I was there.
Dongachan. The
yes,
Ville. That's what they call it. The Ville.
I was about to say that. The Ville. Everyone, like, what are you doing this weekend? I'm going out in the Ville.
Dongachan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. So tell us about Camp Hovey.
Camp Hovey was the smaller piece of Camp Casey. Quiet. Very quiet community. Then you get onto Camp Casey, and it was loud and rambunctious.
It's a party.
It's a party. Because that's where I want to say it was the 55th MPs that were over there. And then I was part of the first BSTB HST MPs. Very long name.
So that's a battalion, Special Troops Battalion, Brigade Special Troops Battalion. I don't know if I have that backwards, whatever. So that's going to be where your non-infantry and artillery people are. So that's everybody else, right?
Yeah, everybody else. We did actually have the tankers up there. So we had the tanker guys up there, a lot of infantry guys up there. And then of course, and then we had the medical up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
So what were your responsibilities?
We worked the road. So we did normal police duties. And we did both on and off post. So we did off post. I want to say it was like maybe a 1 to 2 mile radius around post.
Like an extension of jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's worked very closely with the Republic of Korea. There's a really good relationship.
We worked super close with the Korean police, which was different. So normally, like when you're driving around in your patrol car, even here, civilian law enforcement, you don't drive around running code everywhere. Korean police consistently have their lights on. So they would just be driving around running code everywhere. And we would constantly forget, and we'd be like, what? Where are they going? And we would like follow them. And then they would stop and get out and go get like coffee and get back in their car and be like, this wasn't exciting at all.
Why do they do that?
I think it's just a safety thing. I think that's their reasoning. Like they just want people to see them. Like, hey, get out of the way, kind of thing.
Presence patrol.
Presence.
Yeah.
It's presence. All about presence. So, whereas, so that could kind of be used against them. So because Koreans knew that it was a normal thing for Korean police to drive around running code everywhere, we would get caught in traffic on post or off post. And because the Koreans knew that we did not run code, we only turned on our overhead lights when there was something wrong going on or if we were pulling someone over. to get through traffic, we would flick on our overhead lights, and, you know, people would pull off to the side, and we would just go through traffic and then flick them off.
So, an abuse of station and privilege? Is that what you're telling me?
An abusive station and privilege.
How dare you?
So...
Did you, I'm assuming you had to do, I don't know if they called it this, the courtesy patrol in Dongachan, so you're basically going around literally policing up the drunk GIs who are staying out either close to or past curfew and dealing with all the nonsense. Yes,
the nonsensical things. So one thing that I would have to do all the time, because the majority of the time I was in the Army, actually, about the entire time I was in the Army, I was a team leader. So... I would get put on what's called Ville Patrol, which which started at 9 at night and it ended at about 2 or 3 in the morning.
Whatever was curfew.
Yeah, whatever it was. And we would have to go around the Ville, walk around the Ville, and we would have to police up all the GIs and stuff like that. All the infantry guys, which was, you know, Hovey is super small. So, you know, you throw people in the drunk tank for being ridiculous, and then you see them on Monday morning, like in the PX or somewhere, and they're like eyeing you the whole time because you ruined their whole weekend. So, yeah.
Okay. What is the most ridiculous thing you saw while you were there? Like, I cannot believe I'm having to deal with this right now.
Oh my goodness. And
it doesn't have to be dealing with, you know, American forces. It could be, you know, dealing with the Republic of Korea, whether it's civilians or their military, or something you were tasked to do by your chain of command, just whatever it was, just the most ridiculous thing where you just sat there and was like, I'm really having to do this right now.
Yeah, actually, there was a case that I was called to, for a dog that a soldier, a GI, had purchased from an off-post, like, pet shop, which I wouldn't recommend that in the first place. So he bought this like dog from an off-post pet shop, and it got sick. Well, he took it back to the pet shop and was trying to return it to the owner. And we got called to this because he was upset that the owner would not take the dog back. So we're sitting there trying to talk to the owner who doesn't speak English. So we have to call Katusa over there, because we have no idea what's going on.
Korean augmentee to the United States Army.
Yeah. So we're going like back and forth with this guy, and finally it gets down to, well, you know, I'm there because he won't take the dog back. And I have to write this like extensive report on what happened, and finally this like Korean veterinarian came out of nowhere and started like jabbing the dog with random needles and injecting it with things, and it was just, I think that's one of the most ridiculous things I had to do there.
Kind of surreal.
Like, yeah, like I am serving my country in this capacity right now.
In this Korean pet shop.
In this Korean pet shop.
Yeah. This is what I joined the Army to do. To sit here and mediate between these two clowns.
Yes. I mean, I could go through all the times I had to set aside my whole day to do grounds beautification, but...
Well, that's not MP specific. That's...
Everybody. Everybody, really.
Area beautification.
The Army.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
There's some times I remember being on the backside of Camp Hovey on a very still, quiet morning, and it's very quiet, you know, very serene. And from a distance, you can hear the dogs barking from the dog farms. From the doggy farms,
which, yes. To caveat to that story, so I, you know, me and my sheltered self was unaware that the dog farm thing was a thing. So I would always hear, you know, the dogs barking, and finally a few months in, I finally asked one of my sergeants about it. He was like, yeah, it's a dog farm. Like a breed, like a
puppy mill?
Like a puppy mill? Like that's where you go to buy dogs? And he just kind of laughed at me. He was like, no, it's a dog farm. Like cattle. I was like, oh my God, that's a thing? So...
Okay, Googie.
Yes. Went to go do security convoy for the tankers. And sometimes you'll have like these random old ladies on the side of the road. They cook really delicious food. Yes, they cook all this delicious food that's like super good. And I told one of my guys, my driver, that's I'm not eating dog. That's gross. That's not a thing. So he was like, oh, okay. So we go on this field problem. We're out on a post, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna go up the road here. I think there's an Ajima up here, and I'm gonna see if she's got any food. So he comes back with like this huge plate of chicken and vegetables.
Protein
and vegetables. And he was like, listen, Corporal, I got you some lunch. I'm like, oh, thank God, I'm starving. I'm just chowing down on this. And this is so good. He's like, it's good, huh? It's good, right? And I'm like, yeah. He was like, yeah, that's all dog. That's just nothing but dogs in there. I was very upset.
Yes.
But I finished my lunch. I'm not going to lie about that. So.
When in Rome?
Yeah, I suppose. I've eaten some questionable things before. I've never etten dog that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have to say that's another experience about the Army I never had in the Air Force. I've definitely eaten some questionable things.
that's fair.
You just kind of, whatever.
And some of them actually come in a brown bag that the Army gives you.
Yeah.
I know.
That's so true.
So what happens after Korea?
So after Korea,
you were there for just a year, right?
I was
just
there for a year.
Standard.
Yep. I was there for a year. Okay. So after Korea, I was supposed to go to Fort Carson in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And of course, me being best friends with Murphy, my orders were changed. Literally when I was on the plane going to Fort Carson.
That sounds...
To go to Fort Polk.
Dan's
in Louisiana.
Favorite.
So
that's the sportsman's paradise.
Nice.
It is a thin slice of humidic hell.
Yeah, it's the armpit of the United States. That's what I think.
The Great Depression came into Louisiana and never left.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So I get to Fort Carson and I'm in processing and they're going through everyone's name and they didn't call my name off. So I'm like, what? What is this? I got my Fort Carson papers in front of me. I'm like, you didn't say my name. The sergeant's like, probably because your name's not on here. He's just being a normal, like...
Sarcastic.
Yeah. Like, oh, okay. So they look at him and they're like, yeah, you're not even supposed to be here. You're supposed to be at Fort Polk. I'm like, okay. Well, I was unaware of that. I didn't get a memo. So
I didn't get a fresh set of military orders telling me to go to Fort Polk.
I did not get a fresh cut set. So they sent me over to Branch. I went to Branch, and the lady there, she already seemed annoyed, and she was like, this is ridiculous. I don't even know. Why would they literally change these while you're on the plane. Like, this is not a thing. So she says, okay, well, it says you're slotted to go to Fort Polk, Louisiana. I don't really want to do the paperwork. Do you want to stay here? Or do you want to go to Fort Polk? And I was like, I guess just send me to Fort Polk. I don't know. I didn't know. So she's like, are you sure? She like looked over at her glasses like, are you sure?
Over the glasses?
Yes. She's like, are you sure? She was already, the fact she was already looking at me like an idiot, I should have taken that sign and said, no, leave me here, never mind. I did not. And I said, yeah, no, send me to Fort Polk. She's okay. All right, fine. Prints them off, hands them to me. She's like, good luck. I'm like, all right. So I went to Fort Polk and
well, hold on. Before you went, by the time let me collect myself here. From the time you landed in Colorado to the time you got back on the plane to head to Louisiana. Mm-hmm. How long was the turnaround?
2 weeks.
Okay.
So I was in...
Okay. Well, I mean, that seems about right.
So I was in Fort Carson for about 2 weeks.
I'm picturing in my mind... You said you flew to Louisiana?
Yeah.
Okay, so this won't literally be true, but I'm picturing in my mind that scene in Dumb and Dumber where they're driving through Nebraska, but they think they're going to Colorado. And he's like, man, that John Denver. Yeah. I'm picturing that as you fly into New Orleans or wherever we're in.
But you were on Fort Carson pretty much the entire 2 weeks. So you got to experience Fort Carson and
altitude.
Yes.
And altitude. And you got to see the beautiful scenery and all the shopping and all the restaurants.
And all the infantrymen.
And the Air Force Academy and all that stuff is up there. Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty nice place, right?
Yeah.
And then you got to Fort Polk.
Tigerland.
And I said to myself, you're an idiot. Yeah. And then I saw the caliber of soldier that was at Fort Polk. Well, some of the caliber of soldier at Fort Polk. It's just a different environment.
It is indeed.
And
this is, what year is this now?
Yeah, what year?
It's 2009.
2009. So,
or no, I'm sorry.
third-
2010. So
3rd Brigade, 10th Mountain was still there at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I ended up getting stuck in 272nd MP Company, which had just transitioned. They moved 272nd from Germany to Fort Polk.
I'm sure they were all thrilled to be there.
I think there were maybe 10 of us. So it was like we were this small group of 10 people. That was 272nd MP Company when I first got there.
Wow.
And I'm like standing there for morning formation, looking around. Mind you, I'm still a corporal, so I'm like, where is everybody? Am I in the right place?
Am I in the right place? That's always the question, right?
Am I in the right place? And of course, I start doing the normal soldier thing, freaking out. I'm like pulling my papers out. I'm like, yeah, that's the building number. Where? There's not even anyone smoking out here. I'm like, where is everybody? And finally, like, the ops sergeant walks out, and he's like trying to like zip up and Velcro his top, and he's like, "You're the new female. All right, come on in. We're not doing morning formation. It's not super busy this morning." I'm like, okay.
Very different than Korea.
Very different than Korea. It's like laid back, but I don't know. It's just awkward. It was just awkward. It was like laid back, but not laid back, because you like get in there and you'd have certain NCOs that are very strict and by the book, and then you'd have the other ones that were already in for like 1,000 years, and they were
just kind of
totally over it at that point. Yeah. So, yeah, just sitting in there, we had like a trickling of like a few other soldiers walk in. So finally at the briefing table, it was literally like 10 of us. For probably about 2 weeks, it was just 10 of us. So the ops sergeant was like, you know what? We're not going to do PT. I'm not leading PT for 10 people. I think it's ridiculous. So if you guys go to the gym, I'm cool with that. And just go back to your barracks and be back at 9.
So you're standing up this unit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I mean it has been flagged. So there has to be at least one officer in this formation somewhere.
Yeah. Which I think I saw him one time.
Okay, well, geez. So how long? Let me think about this. You're standing up this unit. How long does it take to get to a point where you have enough people? It's probably a long time until most units are never 100%. But
yeah.
We'll say, within 70 to 80% filled. Like, how long does it take to get to that point?
So it was about 10 of us for about 2 weeks, and then literally the beginning of week 3, people just started trickling in.
Okay.
So they were coming in from, Germany and all over the place, and it actually filled up pretty quick. So probably
you were functional within a month or so?
Oh, yeah, within a month.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
And that's when they started, the fantasy football trading, where they were like, no, I want that soldier. No, I want that. And it was like, switching around.
Gotcha. I'm sorry, and y'all were part of 10th Mountain?
No.
Or you were separate?
No,
Okay.
we were separate.
Okay.
We were part of the 519th MP Battalion.
So that's, autonomous?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So what did you think of, after spending 2 weeks at Carson, the first 2 weeks as you're not really doing anything, which I have my own thoughts on, but your 2 week adjustment period before things started to pick up, what did you think?
I should have stayed at Carson. Mm-hmm. It was, Fort Polk is like in the middle of nowhere. So to really do anything entertaining, you have to drive 45 minutes
Lake Charles.
Lake Charles.
Who could forget about DeRitter?
Oh, God. DeRitter. That's where, like...
That's not 45 minutes.
No, that's not 45 minutes. Because that's where Lake Vernon is. Which, of course, all the new soldiers that are coming from basic training, which is where a lot of our soldiers came from, was basic training. All of them were all, man, we're going down to DeRitter. It's happened. And, oh, my God. Go to DeRitter, where there was a club off post called Zydeco, Club Zydeco, something like that. I did not partake in those festivities.
Dan's acting like he doesn't know.
No, I have no idea.
Yeah,
I did not have time for any of that nonsense.
Yeah, no. There were two very good friends of mine that I spent a lot of time with when I was at Fort Polk, and whenever they said, hey, we're going to go to, Zydeco, I'd be like, oh, that's all you. And I was a barracks rat the rest of the weekend. So
how long are you at Polk, and did you deploy from Polk?
So I was at Polk for a whole year. They finally put us into deployment training. I want to say it was beginning of May. And then we did deployment training with my unit from May all the way until the end of December. And then we finally deployed to Iraq January of 2011.
Early 11. Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of training was your deployment training?
So our deployment training consisted of a lot of convoy operations, counter IED operations, how to set up an AHA or detainee operations facilities.
What's an AHA?
AHAs, like areas that you would keep
An ammo holding area?
ammo holding areas and things like that.
That was a critical task on your pre-deployment checklist?
Listen, it's the Army. I didn't question anything.
Okay.
Which maybe I should have. But that was one of the things that we had to learn about.
Okay.
And
Corporals
then
don't make those decisions.
I just do what I'm told. Like, I don't get paid enough money for that. So, and then we had to go through a lot of different types of medical training. A lot of medical training, actually. We went through a phase where we had to learn, it got more in depth into finding IEDs and bombs and things like that. So we would go through these houses where we would have to find switches or like the little fish wire that would trigger an IED, things like that. So, and that was maybe a week-long course. And at the end, they would send us through a house and we had to like find every single bomb, and if you didn't find it, you had to go through it again.
Okay. Was there nothing law enforcement specific?
There was, but because
I mean, you're going to operate in a different cultural landscape. So
a lot of that was cultural training. So there was, at one point, we went to what's called the box, the sandbox, and it was out, I want to say it was like way back behind Tigerland. Yeah, where they had like the wild horses and things like that. Yeah. So we had to go out there for, I want to say it was like 2 weeks. And it was all set up like Iraq, where they like broadcast the prayers and all that stuff. And we had to go out there and do cultural training and just the types of things that we would be doing when we were in Iraq. It was mission concentrated. Like we're gonna practice our mission before we get over there.
Yeah.
So, and part of that was, learning to train and teach the Iraqi police and the Iraqi army how to do those law enforcement tasks.
Yeah.
Did you actually end up doing that when you deployed?
We did.
Okay, so you deployed in January of 11? Okay.
Which part of Iraq?
Diyala. I was at Fob Warhorse.
For the entire deployment?
For the entire deployment.
Okay. And you were actually teaching the Iraqi police and their military police law enforcement tasks? So
each platoon, so I was in 3rd platoon. Our 2nd platoon got stuck up in Kirkuk to work up in Kirkuk.
Way north.
Way north. So, and then I was down at Fob Warhorse, and we were there with 1st Platoon, which was most of our admin people. So our primary mission or missions while I was down there was I did a female engagement team. So I ended up getting attached to some special forces unit and infantry unit that was over there. And we would go out with them and look for high profile individuals. So because culturally men can't talk to females, they would call the FET team in, and we would go out there and we would go talk to people for them.
The FET team is
female engagement team.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then part of that was, another part of our mission was doing key leadership engagements or KLEs. So we would go out and we would go talk to all the high-ranking Iraqi officials and try and, the sole purpose was the whole hearts and minds, like keeping those relationships intact.
Absolutely.
So,
what kind of training and indoctrination did you get for your FET? Or was that kind of on-the-job training?
that was on-the-job training.
Yeah.
Mostly.
That's
it
kind
was
of what I
like,
figured.
hey, you're a responsible person. You got a good PT score. We're going to snag you for this job.
The unit that you ripped out with, or the unit that you relieved, they didn't. The females within that MP unit didn't like talk to you about it at all.
No, I don't even know if they did it. Actually,
Okay, fair enough.
I think we may have been the first ones to do that.
Okay.
But you were doing that in conjunction with the Special Forces team that was there.
Yeah.
Was the Special Forces team there with the prior MP unit?
No.
So that would probably explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was, they would just, I don't think that they had an overall plan when we got there. It was just kind of like maybe command in general, because it seemed like a lot of our missions would change, and we would just get like these random missions. And I ended up by the time I left Iraq, I had ended up running like 150 combat security missions. So it was just the way that they would come about was, and I'm not saying like everything is smooth, but the things we would get asked to do, it just, some of it didn't seem like it was
really sporadic.
It was very sporadic.
There didn't seem to be a particular focus to what you were asked to do. Okay.
Yeah.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, oftentimes that information is just not making it down. That's not to say that planning is always perfect at the higher echelons either. I'm not going to make that claim. The FET that's interesting to me though. I mean, don't take this wrong way. Were you literally selected just because you were a coherent female? I mean, was that the criteria, or was there a little more?
I think I was honestly I think being a female is obviously a prerequisite, but I think I was selected because I was good at my job.
Yeah, no, that's great. You would be amazed, or maybe not so much, how difficult it is. I've come from a civil affairs background. How difficult it is for some people in the military to just have a normal adult conversation with another human being without
being awkward
and jargony, and maybe that doesn't come as such a surprise to you.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
I know I said my brother is a Marine, but getting out of the military, and I love my brother dearly, I will sit back and watch him, have conversations with people, and he's very jargony. It's very jargony.
It's hard.
Yeah, it is hard.
It's hard.
Because it's something that's beat into you, because it's its own language.
It's part of the culture.
Yeah, it's its own language. Like, people don't realize, being in the military for so long, you do get institutionalized in a way. It's its own little thing.
Yeah.
So.
That's true. Well, I mean, from the time you get to basic training, they're breaking you down to build you into something different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a pretty rapid process, but it really takes hold the longer you're in.
Yeah,
It's very
it does.
true.
So tell us about some of your engagements that you would have, particularly with some of the women Iraqis. Like what was that like?
Well, before we get into that, let's go ahead and take a break real quick.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so where we left off, we were talking about your experience on a female engagement team. So please tell us about some of your experiences working with the Iraqi women.
So, Iraqi women, obviously, understanding the culture over there, they're all extremely religious. So Islam is very prominent. So their treatment, we'll say, from their husbands or the men in their family is a lot different from over here. So trying to talk about the whereabouts of, hey, where's your husband at, or where's your son, is you kind of had to learn how to segue into talking to them. I would always start with, do you make baklava? Is that a thing? Like, you guys make baklava? And I would get them talking about all the desserts they would make. And then all of a sudden I would start asking them questions about, does your husband like baklava? When's the last time he had baklava?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you found out when the last time he was at home and what time he left and things like that. So, you know, they're operating under a level of fear. So you really have to be, you know, gentle and
Kind of oblique.
very tactful.
Tactical questioning.
Those IPC skills or interpersonal communication skills are super important. Whereas, you know, a lot of my infantry buddies, like, we would go into a house. We would go into a house and, you know, some of my buddies, the difference, for example, would be, you know, a friend of mine would say, hey, where's your husband at?
It was very direct, right?
He was very direct. So, and then, you know, they wouldn't want to talk, or they'd freeze up because they're not going to talk to somebody like that. And then, you know, my friend would be like, oh, okay, well, this is useless. And they'd walk out. And that's generally where I would step in and I would start talking to them and things like that. And then I'd come out and I'd be like, hey, you know, I'd give them like my notebook or whatever. And they were like, I don't understand why I can't get information out of these people. I'm a nice person, aren't I?
I'm so charming and handsome, and I'm so awesome at everything that I do. Yeah,
that's up for debate.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's so many different techniques and tactics out there for obtaining that type of information, and it goes back to our previous point of just having a normal conversation. It's so hard for people to do that, and there are cultural barriers. So, like the gender, for example, it's a big one. But you know, we identify that, and then we try to find ways around that.
You have to learn how to meet people where they're at, and it's not about. Something that I noticed was, you know, a lot of those guys would come into the situation with, you know, their background and their experience, and they would be very, like they were better than the person that they were talking to. And when you're going into situations like that to try and get certain pieces of information, like I said, you need to meet people where they're at. And
a little bit of humility goes a long way.
Yes. A little bit of humility goes a long way.
Yeah, and understanding in this interaction you're having with this person, you need them more than they need you.
Right, they don't need you.
Correct. So you need to meet them at their level and understand that dynamic, and that you'll go far. So okay, perfect. Did you ever have any dicey situations when you were on the FET, as far as fearing for your personal safety or your team?
Actually, there were some individuals that we were looking for. We'd been looking for them for quite some time. And they were part of a larger organization that was connected with Al-Qaeda, and they had been planting IEDs and things like that along a lot of our routes. EOD would go out and they would clear routes, and then of course they would get cluttered again.
Of course.
So I would go on these missions with the infantry guys, and we would get, as we were going through traffic circles or small villages, which were the worst, because the roads, first off, are not wide enough for our Caymans. Mm-hmm. So we're like barely squeezing through. We're basically crawling through these villages. And you have all these people on rooftops. And we would get, they would know we were coming.
Of course. Yeah.
And we would get, small arms fire or people throwing like Molotovs at us and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so those, I did not like going through villages, because that 9 times out of 10, that's what we would have to deal with. Yeah. But it got to the point where we actually, I was able to collect enough information, which I was part of capturing these 3 enemy combatants that we'd been looking for like the entire year that we were there.
The IED cell?
Yeah. So, yeah. Dicey, yes. It seemed like, and I think it's pretty normal, the closer you get to finding certain people, that's when sort of like the heat, it heats up a lot more. Because they don't want you to find them, so.
Okay.
So was this a 12-month rotation?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think by then we'd kind of gone away with the 15-monthers, which is what I did in Iraq, which was not fun. Yeah, it was not fun. So 12 months.
Yeah.
And you redeployed to Fort Polk.
Yes.
Before you redeploy, have you made up in your mind, kind of laid out what's coming next as far as, I assume your reenlistment window is probably opening at this point. So what's kind of your decision process at this point?
So I actually, when I was in Iraq, I had made the decision and called Branch, and I asked them to send me back to Korea. I wanted to go back to Korea. So
okay.
A lot of my other friends were actually going back to Korea. So I was like, I really liked it over there. So I'm going to go back to Korea. So, and after coming back from your deployment, you could do that. You had that option. So that was my plan. And then when I got back to Fort Polk, I ended up getting pregnant by my boyfriend. And I had a really long conversation with myself about whether I wanted to continue or if I wanted to get out on a pregnancy chapter. And I did want to continue on the same note. I had watched a lot of my female friends who were away from their children, some of them having newborns. And they really struggled being away from their kids. So I got to a point where I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to get out. So I ended up putting in my Chapter 8 and getting out for pregnancy.
Okay.
When you were exfilling out of Iraq, or maybe after you first got back to Polk, did you feel like that you had made a difference, that you, whether it was you personally or your team or your unit, did you feel like you had made a difference there?
I think in some areas I felt like I made a difference. Like when I was working on the FET team, I felt like I made a difference. I think in the bigger picture, I don't feel like we made that much of a difference. I think that we gave the Iraqi police and the Iraqi military some more skills. But understanding what's going on in that country and, the culture, and it's got a lot of history of certain things that have been going on. I don't feel like I made that much of a difference.
So you were there 11 to 12.
Yes.
Does that sound right? So really 12, probably close to 2013 and beyond is when we saw the rise of ISIS.
Yeah.
So a lot of those, I'm putting the air quotes up, a lot of the gains that we had made in Iraq from the 2003, we'll say 10 years till 2013 or so. All of us Iraq veterans and other Army veterans, military veterans, saw that go up in smoke.
Yep.
So when you were watching the news coverage in 2012, 2013 timeframe, and you're watching Iraq, everything that we'd fought for just being handed over to these psychopaths, like, just what's your thought process? What are you thinking?
I was pretty livid.
Yeah.
I was like, the very first thing that came to my mind was I wasted my time. So it was, watching that was a huge, I felt insulted.
Okay.
Just because, we're all over there doing everything that's asked of us. And even though we don't necessarily, you don't always believe in the mission that you're doing. Sometimes you think it's ridiculous or there's really no point to it. But you're still doing what's asked of you. So, seeing that was just kind of like putting salt on the wound.
It's like, even maybe at the micro level, the thing that we're doing here is probably not making that much of a difference. But at least at the macro level, we're not going to just give this thing away, right? Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, okay.
Okay, well, bringing it back forward.
Yeah.
To, you deciding to get out. What was the process like? Because a pregnancy chapter is different than really any other chapter.
Yeah.
And it is something that is exclusively for the females.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is that process like?
So it's, I don't want to say it's like a normal chapter, but really the only difference is that you're pregnant. I still had to go do PT and all those things. I was just waiting for all my paperwork to get finished. That's it. And finally, by the time I got to my third trimester is when they were finally finished with all my paperwork. And I was able to chapter out and leave.
Okay. So
it was really like, I was literally treated like everybody else. Minus a few things in regard to PT that I like physically could not do.
Right. Were you doing the pregnancy and postpartum physical training?
I was towards the tail end. Not initially.
Okay.
So when I started to look like a pumpkin, that's when I had to do that PT.
Oh, that's when it was enforced?
Yeah.
That you had to go and do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it.
It is an option, and I know that there are some pregnant females within the Army, at least, that choose to stay with their unit and doing unit PT as long as they can.
Yeah.
Did you think that the PT that was offered was beneficial?
The pregnancy PT, for me personally, no. I had always been very athletic when I was in the military. I was doing all the athletic sports. I was on the Army running, or the running team for Fort Polk. I did the Army 10-miler. So, not for me personally, no.
Okay. What about were you taking also the blocks of instruction for first-time mothers?
Yeah, that was mandatory.
Okay.
So, I was, yeah.
Did you find that process beneficial?
I did in some ways. In other ways, maybe not so much. But
okay.
Dan's asking these questions because he was a master fitness trainer for a very long time.
And
so,
nice.
I did the triple PT program at Fort Polk while I was there.
Nice.
Some few years after you were already gone.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
I understand the timeline. You gave birth after you had separated.
Yes.
Okay, so did you move back to Michigan or?
No. So after I separated, I actually moved to Texas for a short while. And then I had my daughter at Fort Sam Houston. And then after I had my daughter, I decided to move back to Michigan because I didn't have any family in Texas. And I was initially going to college in Texas at San Antonio College to try and finish my degree. So
In music.
no, actually, at that point, I had actually switched. I was going for psychology.
Okay.
So, and then obviously when I got back to Michigan, I had a very long heart-to-heart with my dad, who suggested I not do psychology, and I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in accounting. So.
Okay.
Did you did your CPA, all your certifications, all that stuff? Or?
I was going to do my CPA. I ended up, after college, I ended up getting a job with the Army Audit Agency, side auditor for the Department of the Army. And I was going to get my auditing certifications, which I did do through that agency. But then just being a mom and the amount that I had to travel, it was very difficult juggling the two. So I ended up resigning from that job and going back to school for my master's.
Using your GI Bill for all this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
And your master's is still in finance rather than music.
It's in dulcimer.
Actually, I initially started going for my master's in accounting. And then as I was going through the program, I was at Walsh College. I realized, I wasn't really fitting in with the accounting master's program, so I ended up switching to data analytics. And I did data analytics for a little bit, and then ended up switching to strategic intelligence, which is what I'm finishing right now.
All very useful skills.
They're
though.
all very closely related fields.
And they're
It's
very
just like,
marketable.
yeah, and it's just like as you go along in those programs, you start figuring out what you want to do and what you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. So that's what happened.
Okay.
So during all of this, you want to write some books, I assume, yes? So tell us about your journey.
So the Adrenaline Rush series I actually started writing in middle school.
Interesting. Okay.
So I always wanted to write ever since I was little. So I started writing the outline for Adrenaline Rush when I was in middle school. I wrote all through middle school, and then when I joined the military in 2006, I set my writing down for a little bit because I was a little preoccupied.
A little bit.
And then once I transferred to the Army, and I was in Korea, I started to realize what I really wanted to do, why I wanted to write the book series. So I picked it back up again, and I started writing it again. And it just it developed and grew. And then once I started to transition out, I realized, there's not a lot of female veterans out there that are talking about their experiences in the military, transition process, experience in the military, how we deal with PTSD, things like that. So it really shaped what the series has turned into now, which follows a female veteran who is out of the military now, and she struggles with PTSD, and it talks about her transition experience and trauma, how she deals with those things. Plus she's an investigator for a government agency, so there's still action in it. It's not like depressing the whole time. So it's like uplifting and interesting. So, you know, she's solving crimes, and there's a lot of military jargon and like military jokes in it and things like that. So I was trying to find another way to sort of educate and entertain people, just a different avenue to explain what we as veterans, especially female veterans, you know, go through and experience without doing the traditional, like, you know, PTSD pamphlet or something like that.
Or, you know, writing your own autobiography or something
Writing
like
your own
that.
autobiography. Yeah.
Okay.
So I literally took stories and experiences that I shared with other females I served with, and, you know, their stories, and I just put them all into this one female character, Kate Molson.
Yeah, so that kind of answers my question. I was going to ask how much of your personal experience is in the protagonist, but that kind of answers that question.
Makes it sound like it's more of an amalgamation of
Yeah.
of a whole bunch of different people's experiences.
Yeah.
So you picked up writing again when you were in Korea.
Yes.
How much did your peers, superiors, subordinates, whatever, did you ever let them read like what you were working on and, you know, ask for feedback and stuff?
I did not ask anyone to read anything.
This was just something private, just for you.
It was
something private.
written on the sly.
Yes, written on the sly. My very good friend of mine, who was my squad leader in Korea, actually, very prominent mentor of mine, he actually, when he found out that I published my book, he immediately purchased it and read it and had sent me a message that was like, why did you go in the military in the first place? You could have been like this multi-millionaire like author. You probably would have done a better job.
But that's the process, though. You have to do the dumb stuff in the army to get to the book, right?
You have to actually have some experiences in order to write about experiences.
Right, which is what I explained to him. He's like, how did you write this stuff? I'm like, here's the key to being a great author. Writers write about what they know, okay? You can't, you could make it up, but it's a lot more authentic, obviously, if you're writing about real things, you know, that have happened or have happened, which is part of the writing process.
Yeah.
It's part of research. Going out, talking to people, talking about, you know, their experiences, how they felt when they went through the experiences and things like that. Really meeting people where they're at and understanding, you know, their perspective of things.
It's like that old saying in Hollywood, authenticity. You have to have authenticity to really reach out and connect with people.
Yeah.
And once you can fake that, you've got it made.
Yeah.
The other saying, fake it till you make it.
Exactly.
If you treat yourself like you're important, everyone will think you're important.
That's true. Act like you're supposed to be here, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay. So, which is the first one? This is the first one.
Yeah.
We're
This is
doing
the
this in
first
reverse
one.
order. So, and then
This is the second.
And this is your latest release.
Yeah.
So, who are your antagonists in both of the books?
So,
Don't give away too much.
Yeah, fair enough.
Keep it very basic.
it's a conglomerate. Okay. So it's, in order to, there's a lot of different, I would say PTSD in general would be the overall antagonist, if that makes sense.
It does.
So you're talking about someone who is trying to, you know, transition and live a somewhat normal life while battling PTSD. And through that, she's learning that in order to live a normal life and battle PTSD, then she has to actually battle PTSD and not avoid it.
Stare into the skid.
Yes. So.
Okay.
What, I guess, age range would you say that you're
They
writing for
are
now?
definitely 18 plus.
18 plus? Okay.
Yeah. Adult. So I have had a couple, at some of my book events, I've had some younger peoples come up to me, maybe 14, 15 years old, asking if they could read it. And I was like, you know, that would be a question for your parents.
Okay.
We'll definitely review and make your own judgment. But it's...
Now, we have not read your books. but obviously we did our own research. There was a several-year gap between the first and second book.
Yeah.
What was the reason for that? Was it just getting the story right? I mean, was it just other things in life going on? I mean, you keep on going back to school, not for music. So, I mean,
anything but music.
A couple things, actually. So, when I published the first book, I was married. And I had not planned on writing a second one. And then the more I thought about it, I wanted to continue the story. After, resigning from auditing, I had the time to do that. So, and then I got pregnant with my son while I was married. So I was writing book 2, and really developing the story more. So basically life happened.
Yeah. Life does get in the way sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Life happened.
Okay.
So then I finally published book 2, and then I was like, why would I stop?
Yeah.
So now I'm getting
If you've
ready
got more to say, then say it.
Well, I mean, you're doing your book tour or a series of book events and signings and stuff right now. So, are you already sort of brewing the next book? Do you already have a vague general idea of what's gonna happen?
Yeah. So book 3 is actually going to come out in February.
Oh, is it already done?
It's just about done. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I already started writing book 4.
Well, I mean, once you're on a roll,
That's what
Yeah.
we call motivation.
Yes.
Okay.
Tell us about your publisher.
I'm self-published.
You're self-published. Okay, that's what I figured. So, tell everybody what self-publishing is like, because I imagine that's an adventure in and of itself.
That
Yeah.
is an adventure.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful because there's a lot of people out there in the writing industry that will offer you help, and they're not really out there to help you. So
They're
really,
sharks.
yeah, you really have to be very careful about who you allow to help you. So, but I do have an editor. So I, aside from fixing grammar and flow and things like that, I do send my work out to be edited by a professional editor. So, yeah, other than that, I do all the marketing and everything by myself. I do
That's
not
a
have a
full-time
PR
job,
manager.
huh?
That is a full-time job.
Very
Yes.
cool.
That's awesome.
But you get to reap the rewards of your own work by
Yes.
having several pass-throughs who are
See, that's the other thing. I don't so I've been in the writing industry now, I guess I'll say, since I published book 1. And learning, like I said, what I've learned about being very careful about trusting people. If you have a PR manager and you don't agree with a decision that they're making on how to promote your work or market your work, or it doesn't follow your platform or the message you're trying to share, those are just conversations I don't have the emotional energy to have with people, if that makes sense.
fair.
So I just kind of took that out of the mixing bowl and just stuck to doing it myself.
Yeah. Makes sense. Too many cooks in the kitchen and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, specifically the female veterans, the ones that you worked with and whose experiences you kind of, mixed together to create this character and her journey. Mm-hmm. What has the feedback been from them?
It's been positive. I have not actually gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of female veterans. I've gotten more positive feedback from male veterans than I have females.
Why?
I'm really not surprised about it. It's not.
Well, I mean, numerically, there are more male veterans.
There are more male veterans, yes.
But, I mean, that can't explain it all the way.
I think part of it is, and I have heard it from a lot of other females that I served with, it's like sharing our experiences in the military. Sometimes we don't feel like we really rate to do that. And it's because...
Is that like an imposter syndrome kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like an imposter syndrome kind of a thing. But then, even when I was in the military, not all your leadership is phenomenal. You do have leadership that...
The hell you say?
I mean... you do have leader. It's still a thing in the military. It's still pretty prominent where sometimes you'll get leadership who will treat you inferior simply because you're a female.
Look, the Army told us a long time ago that they got rid of all the toxic leaders. So,
it was in a PowerPoint presentation, so it must be true.
So it must be true.
I've seen those PowerPoint presentations. So, but and then it's not to bash anything. It just happens. Like it's in any organization.
Yeah,
it's not like
it's not specific to the military. It's
literally in any organization that you go to.
Yeah.
So especially if it is a male dominated career field, it's just kind of the way that it is sometimes.
What Dan and I have experienced with this program in some cases could actually be dissimilar from your experience in that we've found most of the female veterans that we open up to invite onto the program and take us up on the offer, it's the male veterans who seem more hesitant.
Hesitant, I guess you could say, but they often have a smart remark. And it's like, you could have just said no, man.
Yeah.
Could have just said no.
So there could be some confirmation bias there, and that's just the circles that we run in. So
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
One more thing before we wind it down here. What part of your military experiences or training or the lifestyle of the military or things you learned along the way do you think has been most valuable to you now as a career writer?
Resilience. You gotta have a lot of resilience. You gotta have a thick skin in writing. Writing is very subjective. I've sent my work out to be reviewed by, other people in the writing industry and have gotten super negative feedback. So it's just like anything, I think. You have to have a thick skin. Mm-hmm. And I definitely learned how to have a thick skin and be resilient when I was in the Army. 100%. I think those are the top lesson that I learned. Like, you're not going to like everything people have to say to you, but that doesn't mean that what you're doing means any less.
Yeah. Okay.
So to kind of bring this back full circle, your military service, your writing career, if you could do it all over again, would you do it?
100%. I would not be the person that I am today. I wouldn't be the strong writer I am today. I wouldn't be the mother that I am today if I hadn't done those things.
Yeah. So,
do you think that I think you said it was your cousin. Do you think they were right when they said you're going from the Air Force to the Army? You have that backwards?
I think I did get it backwards.
Fair enough.
I do agree with that one, yes.
Fair enough.
Yes, but I wouldn't... I would not go in the Army. But I do think I got it backwards. Yeah, I should have went the other way around.
Fair enough.
Do you have any parting wisdom that you would like to pass off to anybody, whether it's young men, young women, possible entrance into the military, anybody?
Veterans, aspiring authors. Yeah.
Sure.
Anything you want to share?
I think my favorite saying that my godfather used to say to me all the time, he was in the Army, was the time you take to beat yourself up over doing something wrong is the time you could have taken to do it right.
I like that.
That's very pithy. That's good.
I like that.
That's good. Very good.
Well, Bev, thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
This has been tremendous. You are our first, not just MP or security forces or from any of the services, but you are also our first person to be dual service in that you went from one service to another. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know you can do that, but you can.
Yeah, learned a lot. So thank you again for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank
you so much.
Yeah. So, what do you think?
I really enjoyed the conversation. That is our first discussion we've had with a multi-service veteran. She's a very interesting woman, and I enjoyed particularly talking about towards the end. I like the authorship stuff and the self-publishing in the book and all that, but I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Okay, so going back to the beginning with the multi-service, her family has pretty much everything covered, except for Coast Guard
and your friends in the Space Force.
But I mean, Marines check, Army check, Navy check. She was the first one to go into the Air Force. She didn't say if anybody has since, but she was in the Air Force. So I mean, they've got the primary stuff covered.
Yep.
And so I mean, that was pretty interesting. But then her move to the Army from active Air National Guard, because she was in the active Guard Reserve, to active Army, and then going to Santa Fe, where it was all the prior service.
Yeah, I learned something. I didn't know anything about that.
When I was a drill, we had prior service guys in our platoons. And it wasn't like they were all dedicated into one group. It was, there was a guy who was in the Marines over here. We had another guy who was in the Navy, in this squad or this platoon or what have you. So I'm wondering, because she didn't have like a break in service. She went from one service into the other. I'm wondering if those people in Santa Fe were all people like that did not have a break in service, were just transferring to a different service. Yeah. I'm wondering if that's what it was. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I've never heard of
such a thing. I mean, I imagine there's different schools of thought on the whole thing, because my line of thinking would be that in order to insulate the other service folks who are coming into the Army, that you would want them with Army trainees. But
you'd think so.
There's usually a reason why we do things the way we do things, although not always.
Yeah, sometimes the reason is just because that's the way we've always
done it this way.
Yeah.
Who here has not heard that? Okay, so.
But yeah, that was interesting.
And she wanted to be a Detroit cop and got talked out of it, which, God bless you if you're a police officer in Detroit. I have to imagine that is a very difficult job.
I have seen the Beverly Hills Cop movies. And Detroit does not. I don't think that crime in Detroit has gotten better since Eddie Murphy was portraying a fictional.
Wait, that wasn't a documentary? So she ends up in the MP Corps. Mm-hmm. Fort Leonard Wood, lost in the woods in Missouri. And we did talk about the beautiful winter weather there, which we discussed on a previous episode.
Yes.
With Luke. So, Korea. She volunteers for Korea. I have pretty extensive experience in Area 1 in Korea. It is a very, very, very different experience. And again, things have changed even since I was there, because a lot, not all, of Area 1 has been pushed south of the Han River in Seoul for reasons. So, that was the Wild Wild West in Area 1 during that time period. So a lot of things to be done and things to not do in Dongachon, also known as the Ville. So I imagine being part of the MP Corps would be a very interesting experience. I think she undersold some of her experience.
Yes, I think so too. I think the reason that she didn't perhaps take the bait that I offered her about the wild experiences is because she knew that they would not be audience friendly.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's probably why.
Whatever you're picturing in your mind right now is probably true.
Yeah.
So,
but I did like the reason that she wanted to go to Korea was to go and experience something, different, new, and go to a different place. Because she said that her list was like Korea, Germany, and Hawaii, and she wanted to go and experience something different than she already knew, which is totally cool. I don't know why she chose Korea specifically, but whatever, to each their own. But she didn't leave there without those experiences, because she did wind up dining on a large platter of bulgogi. So, and then she even later on wanted to go back.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that she got to enjoy those experiences abroad. I wish that so many service members, when they get stationed abroad, they tend, and I think we've talked about this before, they tend to sit in their barracks or they just stay in the town that's right there around the post, and they don't go out and experience things. And that drives me insane.
Or they get stationed at Fort Bragg and complain about, the street outside the front gate of Fort Bragg and never really experience the rest of the community.
Yeah. I mean, that sort of
but
thing.
It's kind of a stereotype that exists for a reason, but it's a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to put yourself in a mental prison and just complain about your situation, then congratulations, your situation is not going to be very pleasant.
Yeah. So. But she actually got out and got to experience some things. So that is great, and I applaud her for that. I applaud everybody that goes to a different country and actually goes out to try to explore the country.
Yeah. So fast forward to she goes to Carson, or so she thinks she's going to Carson, ends up in Louisiana, which couldn't be more different. So we're talking no. You're at the foot of Pikes Peak. Fast forward, you're in a giant, enormous swamp. So
yes.
That John Denver's full of
Dumb and Dumber reference.
Yeah, so kind of interesting how that all turns out, and very classic Army.
Yeah.
I'll say this as the officer on the podcast. That stuff happens much more to the enlisted folks than it does the officers, where some sergeant major somewhere changes his or her mind at the last second and people get jerked around.
Yeah.
I won't say the officers never do it to each other, but that is an enlisted phenomenon.
Yeah. So if she had only been at Carson for, say, 48 hours, she would have not really gotten to appreciate all the things, all the amenities that are available and everything. So going to Polk after 48 hours at Carson wouldn't have been, I guess such a,
it's like a way station.
What did I choose? But she got to be there for 2 weeks, where she had, every sort of dining and shopping and all these things available for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then she flew down to Fort Polk, which is in the middle of a swamp, and there is really nothing to recommend it. There really isn't.
What do you really think, Dan?
There's a casino in Lake Charles, which is about 45 minutes or an hour away, depending on, how fast you drive, what kind of traffic you got caught in. But other than that, there's New Orleans, which is several hours away. And I don't care what anybody says, New Orleans is not exactly a beautiful city.
Ugh.
I'm putting it graciously.
Brief digression, because you live there. I didn't. I've done some training in Fort Polk, but it was always transitory, right? Come in, do thing, leave. Of all the places in the continental United States that I've been to, driven through as whether it's in an official capacity or unofficial, one of the places I've been where the local drivers were just appallingly bad, it just jumps out in my mind, is Lake Charles, Louisiana. I just remember having to transit through there, every day for a couple weeks, and just eye-poppingly bad drivers there. I don't know if that's still the case or not. This was over a decade ago, but
yes. So things may have changed since I was stationed there. I don't think that they would have changed much.
I don't think much changes in that.
Yeah, I mean, the people at Fort Polk have been bragging about opening a Chili's or an Applebee's on post for over a decade, and it's never happened.
That's all local politics.
Yeah.
So so she ends up in Iraq. Let's jump.
Yes.
She's in Iraq. She deploys as an MP in an MP unit, right? But the job that she's doing there seems to be less of an MP position and more of and I learned about these firsthand through being in USASOC, and that's the female engagement teams, the FETs.
Oh yeah, those started popping up in 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
We utilized them during my second tour in Afghanistan.
Yeah. So not exclusive to Iraq. So
yeah.
These teams, and they were ad hoc, at least at first anyway. In that they were created on the fly. Later on, we got smarter about it and started actually having an assessment and selection for these young women and putting them into organized teams with an actual leadership structure. That comes later. Sounds to me like she enjoyed, if you can use that word, her experience doing that, in that it was enriching, and at least at the time that she was making a difference, which we talked about this towards the end, and unfortunately how we took all our gains in Iraq and tossed it out the window. But it seems to me like she got a lot of really enriching experience doing it.
I guess, I mean, she is a communicator, and having that skill is obviously helpful. And being a good communicator helps you break down those barriers of culture, language, the social norms of whatever area that you're in.
Yep.
And so, I mean, kudos to her, because I mean, she's right. She said that she was talking about how the infantry guys would kick in the door and ask a question and then turn around and walk away. As a crusty old infantryman, I have seen that.
Yeah.
Yes. The infantrymen tend to be direct.
Well, so yes, we kind of touched on this, and I didn't elaborate on it because I didn't want to step on her talking about her experience, but we want all the tools in the tool bag. And sometimes being incredibly coarse and direct is exactly the thing that is needed for that situation. Sometimes it is not only not so, it is actually counterproductive. And so we want to apply the right tools to the right situations. Bring in the FET. So we have our bases covered.
Yeah. And it sounds like she was quite talented at it.
Yeah. So the experiences, and we'll kind of wind down her time in Iraq, the experiences that she gleaned during her combat deployment goes back to Fort Polk, and then she says she got pregnant, and then that kind of summarily ended her career on her. We didn't ask her.
Well, I mean, it was on her terms, because
we didn't ask her directly if it was on her terms. But
she had the option. She could have stayed in because she was wanting to go back to Korea at that point.
Yeah.
For some reason. Well, she said she enjoyed it, and I mean, hats off to her.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have, but she chose, because I mean, it was an option. You can stay in, and you can be. You can have a child, and she said that by talking to other service members that she was with, who were moms, that was not something that she wanted really any part of.
Yeah.
She wanted to focus more on being a mother, and so she took the pregnancy chapter, which is not unheard of. Maybe it's more common than I know of. But it's not something that was particularly common from my experiences.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was what worked for her, and she obviously enjoys being a mother.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so she chooses to write. She said she started, really her outline, I believe, is what she said, when she was in middle school, and she wrote at least. Probably beyond an outline. She didn't really elaborate on how much she had written during her time in uniform.
Yeah.
She didn't really say, but obviously her experiences inform her writing in the book, in addition to some of the other anecdotes and stories she hears from other service members, particularly women. Mm-hmm. So Dan and I will read her books. I'm actually looking forward to getting into some fiction, because I've been very heavy in the nonfiction lately. So nice to have another author on the show.
Yeah, it's always good to talk to. I enjoy talking to people who have a broad range of experiences, and you tend to get that with with veterans,
Yeah.
because veterans are in every facet of life. But
Yeah.
I don't think that Renaissance Woman really covers it. I mean,
An autodidact?
She was doing a little bit of everything, from music to finance to, we talked about it off camera. She was in real estate, or she still is in real estate.
Wasn't clear on that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, so many different things. Analytics, and of course, the writing. I mean, she does her own PR.
Yeah.
She does her own outreach. She does her own scheduling for all the book stuff. Just truly driven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, she doesn't really have much going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then on top of that, she's
Mother,
she's a mom,
mother of
kids.
two.
Yeah.
And,
So
yeah.
yeah.
So Bev, thank you so much for dedicating some time and effort, incorporating us into your trip.
Truly wonderful to have you, and we hope that you, the audience, enjoyed hearing about her stories and experiences as much as we did.
So, any parting shots on Bev?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
So, free fire.
Free fire.
All right. After the holidays, I'm sure it's really like the last thing that you want to think about. But of course, it's something I think about.
What a great way to lead. Okay.
I think about all the time. We're going to talk about food. The world is ending in 3 hours. There's a giant meteor coming, and Bruce Willis is not going to be able to assemble a team in time to go up there and blow it up.
Our lives depend on Ben Affleck. Is what you're telling.
Don't get me started. Okay. You have 3 hours. You have one last dinner. Or we'll say one last meal.
Meal of any.
Okay?
Okay.
So, what are you having for that meal? And what is one person from, we'll say, the 20th century that you would like to have a meal with, that you have never met? You've never met them, you've never spoken to them.
Okay.
You just know of them.
So last meal, 20th century figure that I've not met. Yeah. Before I answer that, Ben Affleck.
Should have died on that rock.
And anytime I think of Ben Affleck, I think there's an old South Park episode where, if you're South Park fans, probably already know where I'm going with this. I'll keep it PG, but let's just say there's a missing child who's been missing forever, and the parents of said missing child have buttocks where their heads should be.
I remember that.
And it turns out the missing child, spoiler alert, is Ben Affleck. So
I reiterate, Ben Affleck should have died on that rock.
But he was found in the town of South Park. Okay. Last meal with a 20th century figure. I would have. We'll shoot from the hip here. I don't want to overthink this. So how about a nicely sized ribeye steak, cooked medium rare, lightly seasoned. Don't ever put steak sauce on your steaks, for God's sakes. Lightly seasoned. I would like fresh steamed seasonal vegetables, so we'll just say, maybe a little bit of asparagus, a little bit of green beans, some green. I would like potatoes to go with the steak. How about the little golden Yukon ones, lightly buttered? Is this funny to you? This is my last meal. You think this is funny?
Continue.
Okay. So lightly salted with a little sprig of fresh rosemary. Yes. So that'll round out the main course. I would have liked, as the lead-in, I would have liked to have had a nice small fresh salad, greens. I do like arugula. I'm probably the only person who likes arugula, so kind of a field greens with a vinegar-based salad dressing. And then to round it out with dessert. So this is my final dessert, huh? I would be enjoying this. How about... We talked about this on our Thanksgiving episode. I would just go all American and have a freshly made apple pie from scratch, a la mode. I mean, we're all gonna die, so why not? So with fresh vanilla ice cream, it has to be the good stuff, not the artificially flavored sugary garbage, like the good stuff. And then when all that's done, I would have a glass of probably Buffalo Trace neat, and I would be enjoying this with Winston Churchill. Oh. I have questions.
Sounds great. It also sounds almost verbatim what I would have chosen.
I know. That would explain why you had that like grin on your face the whole time while I'm talking about, you know, my imminent death, which Dan thinks is amusing.
It wasn't that. It was as you kept on saying things, because I would have chosen a nice T-bone steak. Just
bone in.
Bone in.
Okay.
Just flash sautéed with a little bit of butter and salt and pepper. Mm-hmm. Just singe it on both sides, mm-hmm. as make it as rare as possible, mm-hmm. with some sautéed green beans and onion and mm-hmm. some minced garlic.
Mushroom sounds good too. I want to tack that on.
No. So some sautéed green beans with onions and garlic, and probably some basil or oregano sprinkled on it, and then some oven roasted potatoes mm-hmm. in just enough olive oil so that they're just barely browned, so they have like that, you can feel the resistance as your teeth sink into them, but then it's nice and soft.
Oh yeah,
on the inside. Amazing.
And I'm guessing
again sprinkled with some probably oregano and some celery salt.
I'm guessing for dessert you want jellied cranberry sauce.
Why you got to bring up old stuff?
That's a callback to our Thanksgiving. Okay. Okay.
But well, I mean, in that vein, it would absolutely be pecan pie.
Okay.
But I have a recipe for a bourbon pecan pie.
Go on.
So you can actually use some bourbon or some whiskey, but they actually have a bourbon liqueur that you can also use.
Bourbon liqueur?
It's like bourbon flavored liqueur. It tends to be sweeter than the bourbon, but I mean, if you're just using a little bit for the taste, then you can use that. But yes, it is a bourbon pecan pie, and it's got a little bit. You can use either chocolate chips or chocolate flakes or cocoa powder to give it a little bit of a chocolatey taste too. And then throw on top of that some fresh from the creamery vanilla ice cream.
Yeah. So you and I are like 80 to 90% the same. So yes.
And then I would have to choose a different guest because you took Winston Churchill, and when we meet in the hereafter, you can tell me exactly what he said.
I think you should never surrender.
Fight on the beaches.
Fight on the beaches.
So a guest.
Joseph Stalin? Is that you know what? I have questions.
Oh, I have questions for Stalin too, but I mean, I'll be able to ask them easily from above while he's burning below. Yes. No. Teddy Roosevelt died in what? He died right after World War I, didn't he?
Teddy.
Teddy.
Sorry, I was thinking FDR.
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so he would have still been alive in the 20th century. So I'll go with Teddy.
Yeah, he was the president in the 20th century.
Was he? I thought he was like the last 1800s president. Oh, whatever. Okay, so yeah, I'm taking Teddy Roosevelt then too, because
I mean he would have been one of the first in the 20th century.
Okay, well, but he was an interesting character. He had a very interesting life. In the same way that Churchill had a very interesting life. Yeah. From being, a sickly boy who was not really expected to live, and to basically forcing himself to overcome his physical ailments, and as an author and, probably overrated soldier. Or military member, I should say.
Who put himself in for a Medal of Honor. Yes.
He's not
for a war that he helped start.
He's not the only person to have ever done that.
Teddy Roosevelt helped contrive and start the Spanish-American War, which was totally unnecessary and was our short-lived soiree into imperialism in the Philippines in particular, which was not a good idea and ill-fated and unnecessary. And I'm not a Teddy fan.
That sounds treasonous to me.
I'm not a Teddy fan.
You are judging him based on his later actions, and I think that is unfair because he gave us the teddy bear.
He did.
And he gave us our wonderful parks department that I so enjoy.
I agree with the creation of the national park system,
Yes.
which Teddy can take credit for.
Yes. So
He doesn't belong on Mount Rushmore, though.
debatable.
Putting him in the pantheon,
Debatable.
no.
I suppose it depends on what your criteria are. But regardless,
Irregardless.
our last meals are virtually identical. I guess that has something to do with our brains.
Well, one thing that you and I don't have in common is that your stage name used to be Bourbon Liqueur, and ooh,
I told you that in confidence.
I know. Oh boy. Okay.
All right.
On that note, it is 2025.
Yep.
It is a new year.
It's a new year, but here's the same old song and dance. Like, subscribe,
Yep.
share, leave
Please.
a rating or review, follow us on all the social medias, and all that jazz.
Yeah. Please. We've got a lot of great partners and sponsors for the show now. So
Yeah.
great American-made products out there.
Yeah.
Most of them are veteran-owned services as well. So
give them a shot.
Good businesses to be working with. And you're helping veterans. You're helping us, and we appreciate any patronage for the show.
Yeah.
So take us out, Dan.
And remember, your service matters.